Jamaica, February 1992. The streets of West Kingston are lined with thousands of mourners, among them former Prime Minister Edward Seagar. They have come to bury a man accused of over 1,000 murders, a drug lord who built an empire spanning 2 continents. To the world, he was a monster. To Tivoli Gardens, he was a god. Lester Lloyd Coke was born in 1947 in Denham Town, a ghetto in West Kingston, and a stronghold of the People's National Party. He was raised in the PNP-supporting Denham Town neighborhood and initially served as a PNP enforcer. In 1966, Coke, then a 19-year-old apprentice locksmith, was shot 6 times in the back by his own PNP comrades and left for dead. As he lay bleeding in the street, doctors from the Jamaica Labour Party stronghold of Tivoli Gardens rescued him. This act of mercy would secure his lifelong loyalty to the JLP and its leader, Edward Seagar. This betrayal and rescue transformed Coke's political allegiance. He became an enforcer for Edward Seagar's JLP, and he also became a powerful crime boss with the pseudonym Jim Brown. He was said to be a protector of the poor in Tivoli Gardens, using his position to build a power base that would eventually challenge the state itself. Coke's criminal education began under the tutelage of Claudius Claude Massop, the original Don Dada of Tivoli Gardens and leader of the Phoenix Gang. Massop was Jamaica's first true Don Dada, a man who understood the delicate balance between politics and crime. February 4th, 1979. The day everything changed, Claudius Massop was killed by police. His death created a power vacuum that would be filled by his most loyal protege, Lester Lloyd Coke, who had worked as Massop's enforcer, quickly stepped into the void. He became Massop's successor, taking control of what would soon become known as the Shower Posse. His original street nickname was Bye-Bye, but after being released from prison in the 1970s, he adopted the name Jim Brown. Inspired by the NFL Hall of Fame player, Coke didn't build his empire alone. Alongside his partner Vivian Blake, he transformed the Phoenix Gang into the Shower Posse. The name had a dual meaning, derived either from Edward Seagar's campaign promise to shower blessings on the people, or more notoriously, from the gang's tactic of showering rivals with the people. The Shower Posse was widely considered a distinct organizational entity in Jamaica, and the U.S. with Coke as its chairman. At the top, the leaders controlled their posses and remained isolated from the everyday street-level activities. Sub-leaders made up the second level, while foot soldiers carried out the violence on the ground. The 1980 election would become the bloodiest in Jamaica's history, with over 800 people killed and killed. The 1980s were also known as the Shower Posse. The 1980s were also known as the Shower Posse, and rival gangs fought for political control using high-powered M16 rifles. By 1976, a Tivoli-based JLP gang, later known in some circles as the Shower Posse, had consolidated control over the area. Coke's role in the Shower Posse, an estimated 35% to 40% of the crack cocaine market in the United States. The Shower Posse, the revenue was staggering. Individual operations generated more than $60,000 per day in profits. Smaller affiliated groups in cities like Elizabeth, New Jersey, brought in up to $100,000 per week. The Shower Posse's U.S. operations were headed by Vivian Blake, while in Jamaica it was controlled by Lester Lloyd Coke, also known as Jim Brown. Vivian Blake, the organization's U.S. leader, was later charged with smuggling more than 1,000 tons of cocaine into the United States. At 1980s prices, the street value of this quantity would represent several billion dollars. Move beyond mere political patronage. He became a financier in his own right, no longer dependent on politicians for resources. He had achieved what every gangster dreams of, complete independence and power. Lester Coke, Jim Brown, managed the Jamaican operations from the political constituency of the Prime Minister of Jamaica, Edward Seagar. But the Shower Posse's success was built on blood. Between 1985 and 1988 alone, the gang was blamed for approximately 1,400 murders in the United States. In Jamaica, the body count was equally staggering. May 1985, the Jamaican government had put out wanted flyers for Lester Coke, sought in the mass murder of 12 people in Kingston. The Jamaican government was actively hunting him for these brutal killings. 1984, the Rima Massacre. Coke led a midnight raid on the Rima neighborhood, setting houses on fire and executing 12 residents as they fled. The victims of Coke's reign of terror included Tina Stallworth, shot and killed, case unsolved. Milton Baker, beaten to death at just 7 years old. David Manning, murdered by Joseph Clark, and countless others whose names were never recorded. That same year, Coke killed 7 JLP members who defected to the PNP, enforcing party loyalty through targeted killings. His forces in Tivoli Gardens enforced party loyalty through these brutal murders, ensuring that no one would dare challenge the JLP's dominance in West Kingston. The violence followed them to America. 6 weeks after arriving in the U.S., Coke allegedly oversaw the execution of 5 people in a Miami crack house, including a pregnant woman. Professional soccer star Colin Falls was murdered at a Miami picnic. At the Taste of the Islands restaurant, 4 people died, and 17 were wounded in a gang shooting. Then there was the legend of the chainsaw. Federal witnesses later testified that Coke himself executed a man with a chainsaw for failing to repay a drug debt. The gang operated under an internal code known as the System, complete with torture chambers and kangaroo courts. They showed no regard for innocent bystanders, using overwhelming firepower in public spaces to send a message. Their killing triggered a gun attack on the Crossroad police station and the murder of policeman Inspector LaSalle Walsh in downtown Kingston, demonstrating that no one, not even their enforcement, was safe from the shower posse's wrath. Yet in Tivoli Gardens, Lester Lloyd Coke was viewed as a saint. Using his drug profits, he funded community programs, built houses, paid school fees, provided medical care, and created jobs for the poor. He maintained peace and order in a neighborhood where police often could not enter without his consent. Residents viewed him as their true leader, rather than the state. He was their protector of the poor, a title even bestowed upon him by high-ranking politicians like Edward Seager. Coke famously declared that he might one day be prime minister. In exchange for providing showering votes for the JLP, Coke was largely shielded from the law for years. This quid pro quo, political power for criminal immunity, was the foundation of Jamaica's garrison community system. Edward Seager was dependent on these gunmen within the polity, and in the process undermined the office of prime minister, and left this position vulnerable to criminal influence. December 3rd, 1976. The world was shocked when gunmen stormed Bob Marley's home in Kingston, shooting the reggae legend just days before his Smile Jamaica concert. According to the Netflix documentary, Remastered: Who Shot the Sheriff, Lester Lloyd Coke was not just a bystander. He was present and a party to the shooting. The attack on Marley was more than just a random act of violence. It was deeply rooted in Jamaica's political turmoil of the 1970s, where gang leaders like Coke were often aligned with political factions, using violence as a tool of control and intimidation to silence peace movements. Some historians and investigators have suggested a darker truth, that the CIA allegedly supplied weapons to the shower posse to destabilize the left-wing government of Michael Manley in the 1980s. While never proven, this theory adds another layer to the complex web of politics, crime, and international intrigue that defined Coke's reign. September 1988, the United States government finally caught up with Lester Lloyd Coke. A federal grand jury in Miami indicted 34 members of the shower posse, including Lester Lloyd Big Jim Brown, Coke, the top leader, and his partner Vivian Blake. Federal authorities believe that within the shower posse, leadership was shared between Vivian Blake and Lester Lloyd Coke. The charges were extensive: drug trafficking, conspiracy, and multiple counts of murder. The net was closing in on the shower posse's leadership. While Coke faced justice, his partner Vivian Blake chose a different path. Indicted on the same charges in 1988, Blake fled the country rather than face justice. He would remain a fugitive for several years. In 1989, Lester Lloyd Coke was arrested by a joint operation involving the ATF, U.S. Marshals, and Jamaican authorities on charges encompassing drug trafficking, murder, and weapons offenses. He was placed in the General Penitentiary in Kingston, now known as the Tower Street Adult Correctional Center, to await extradition to the United States. January 1992. Just as Coke's extradition proceedings were reaching their climax, tragedy struck his family. His eldest son, Mark J.T. Coke, was shot and killed while riding his motorcycle down Maxfield Avenue in St. Andrews. The violence that had defined Coke's life had now reached into his own family. The loss of his heir apparent was a devastating blow to the man who had built an empire on blood and loyalty. This personal tragedy would break the Don's spirit and lead to his eventual surrender. February 23, 1992, the day of Mark Coke's funeral. As Lester Lloyd Coke sat in his cell at the General Penitentiary, a fire broke out. The flames quickly engulfed his cell, and Coke was burned to death. Official reports state that Coke died from suffocation during the fire, but the source of the fire was never identified, leading to widespread speculation and conspiracy theories. Rumors swirled in the aftermath. Some believed Coke was murdered to prevent his extradition, perhaps by powerful figures in Jamaica, who feared what he might reveal in an American courtroom. Others speculated it was an inside job by prison officials. Still others suggested it was revenge for his son's murder. Allegedly, Coke had sent word that he would speak about the politicians who enabled him. The truth remains buried in the ashes of that prison cell. While Coke met his mysterious end, his partner Vivian Blake's story continued. After years on the run, Blake was finally captured in 1992. He spent 7 years in custody, fighting extradition. On January 5, 1994, Blake was formally arrested pursuant to an extradition warrant. Unlike Coke, Blake would eventually face American justice. He died in Jamaica in March 2010, the same year that Coke's son Christopher would also face extradition to the United States. Upon Lester Lloyd Coke's death, the Shower Posse didn't disappear. Coke's adopted son, Christopher Dudas Coke, known as the President, was elected as the new head of the Shower Posse. Christopher Coke took control of Tivoli Gardens and the Shower Posse. Following his father's death in 1992, he proved to be a savvy leader, maintaining the gang's drug operations, while also positioning himself as a community leader and political power broker. But the law eventually caught up with Christopher Coke, too. In 2010, after massive protests and a bloody siege of Tivoli Gardens that killed over 70 people, he was extradited to the United States, where he faced the same charges that had once threatened his father. Coke waived his right to judicial extradition proceedings in Jamaica and subsequently was transferred to the custody of the DEA and U.S. Marshals. In 2012, a U.S. federal judge ordered a $1.5 million forfeiture of profits specifically related to his individual trafficking operations, though this represented only a small fraction of the organization's historical earnings. Tragedy continued to plague the family. Coke's daughter, who went by the name Mompy, and her husband were later killed in a shootout, leaving the family shattered. The Shower Posse's decline was gradual but inevitable. After Lester Lloyd Coke's death in 1992, the organization lost its founding visionary. While Christopher Coke maintained control for nearly 2 decades, the gang's power was slowly eroded by increased law enforcement pressure from both Jamaican and American authorities. Internal power struggles within the organization. The extradition of key leaders, including Christopher Coke, in 2010. Changing drug trafficking dynamics in the Caribbean and United States. There were apparently 191 gangs in 2010 and 381 gangs by 2018, following the crackdown on the Shower Posse in 2010. Internal power struggles within the organization. The extradition of key leaders, including Christopher Coke, in 2010, changing drug trafficking dynamics in the Caribbean and United States. There were apparently 191 gangs in 2010 and 381 gangs by 2018, following the crackdown on the Shower Posse in 2010, showing how the fall of one major organization created a power vacuum that was filled by numerous smaller criminal groups. Today, while remnants of the Shower Posse still exist, the organization that once terrorized 2 continents has been significantly weakened. The era of the Don Dada is fading, replaced by new criminal enterprises and changing political landscapes. Lester Lloyd Coke's story spans from the violent streets of 1970s Kingston to the halls of American justice. He rose from enforcer under Claudius Mossop to become the Don Dada of Tivoli Gardens, building a criminal empire that stretched across continents and generated billions of dollars. His life was a study in contradictions, a man who was both monster and messiah, executioner and protector, criminal and community leader. His titles reflected this duality: Don Dada, Jim Brown, the big man, the executioner, protector of the poor. His life was marked by violence, tragedy, and mystery. The suspicious fire that ended his life on the day of his son's funeral remains one of Jamaica's greatest unsolved mysteries. Was it murder, accident, suicide? The answers died with him. Seagar's decision to attend Lester Lloyd Coke's funeral in Kingston in 1992, while leader of the opposition, sparked intense political debate, highlighting the deep connections between Jamaican politics and organized crime. But his legacy lives on, not just in the continued operations of the Shower Posse under his son Christopher, but in the communities he shaped, the families he destroyed, and the questions that remain unanswered about power, politics, and justice in modern Jamaica. Like, subscribe, and click the notification bell for more content like this. Thanks for watching.